Democratic senators on the committee didn't take Blackburn's concerns And good morning, and welcome to Boles.tv. I'm David Boles, and it's wonderful to see you. Bright and early, 9 a.m. Eastern is when we're live with you, Monday through Friday. And Friday coming up at 10:15, tomorrow, that's tomorrow, right? Yes, tomorrow, Jana Marie will be here, providing you a wonderful lesson in American Sign Language, and you will learn about vegetables. And then Saturday and Sunday, Jana Marie returns. Limited engagement? Who knows? We hope not. We hope it's on forever at 11 a.m. Saturdays and Sundays, as she talks about American Sign Language and disability and other interesting topics that are important to us as people. So I got an email yesterday from the Twitch overlords, and it's rather interesting in what they're trying to do and to make things better, I guess, for live streamers. And it has to do with getting attacked. And we've talked about bot attacks here and bad behavior here in the live stream before. So Twitter support says these targeted attacks, known more widely as hate raids, were unacceptable. No one should have to experience that kind of treatment on Twitch, or anywhere for that matter. As we've said before, these were orchestrated by highly determined bad actors, but their effort doesn't excuse what happened or how long it continued. Bot attacks are rampant across the internet and do not have an easy fix. We'll likely never be able to eliminate them entirely, but several updates this year, including back-end site-wide tech and creator tools like phone-verified chat, have cut down on their numbers significantly. This year, we've proactively removed over 15 million bot accounts, and that number continues to grow. Our work in this space is not over. We're continuing to work on site-wide proactive detection updates, as well as pursuing legal action against individuals who carried out many of the attacks. Your feedback around these raids has always been an important factor in how we decide what to do next, so as always, keep it on a comin'. So that's lovely. And what these hate raids were, I guess, female streamers, perhaps transgender streamers, people technically in the minority, and we know there are a lot of hateful people out there, and what they would do is they would go into these live streamers' chat areas and bomb them in chat with their hate. And they would have these bots say terrible, terrible, terrible things to them in chat, ruining the experience. There's Dora. Good morning, Dora. And it ruins the experience because you're trying to have a conversation. And the whole idea of Twitch is that the chat is active and the host can speak to chat and chat can speak to the host. So it's, not just this one big monologue over nothing. And so these streamers would have to either turn off their chat or stop streaming, but terrible things were said. And it took Twitch a very long time to try to address and fix this problem. And now they have implemented things like phone verification and email verification and evasive bot detection. So it's slowly in there creeping up. And bots are everywhere. I know we have a lot of viewers, and I know a lot of them are probably bots. And I don't know how to stop it. I don't know what to do about it. I don't really care because I'm not trying to do anything with this stream other than entertain people. But I guess advertisers care if real people are watching or not. Is it that hard to ban a bot? I don't know. I can't imagine it would be. And there are people who refuse to verify their phones. They don't want Twitch knowing who they are. And I would very humbly say to you, if you feel that way, Twitch already knows who you are. They know your name, they know where you live, they know your IP address. And if in any way you've connected your Amazon account to your Twitch account, which is advisable because there are a lot of benefits to doing that, Amazon knows who you are. So for people who refuse to connect a verifiable phone number with their online personality, it makes one wonder why. You're not protecting your privacy. Does it mean you're a bad actor? You want to say terrible things in someone's chat? I don't know, but it's a little suspicious. So we have the Twitch minimum security settings set for this live stream, and we can lighten them up, and we can enforce them harder as necessary. And when we first started this stream, there were no restrictions whatsoever, and we got a couple of trolls in our chat talking about poop and pedophilia, and just like, why are you here? What do you get out of saying that to anybody's chat? What's the point of it? To make you feel better that you're ruining the world just a little bit at a time? I don't understand them, but I'm glad that Twitch is fighting against the bots, wherever they are and whatever they may be doing. In another interesting update yesterday from the inbox, the Google told us, as workspace clients, that live translated captions are now available in Google Meet, which is the Google version of, I guess, FaceTime and Zoom and WebEx and all those other things. And it works well. We've used it before. So what's changing when in 2021 we announced a beta for live translated captions in Google Meet. Now that's the big difference here, is the live part, because that's hard to do, but it's also being done by computers and artificial intelligence. That's how the captions are being performed here, from me to you. A computer's listening to what I say, and it's being captioned. And not always correctly, but it's better than nothing, as the beautiful and talented Jana Marie often tells me. We are now making live translated captions generally available for select Google Workspace editions. Meeting participants can translate English meetings now into French, German, Portuguese, and Spanish. Translated captions are available on Google Meet, on web, and mobile devices. Who doesn't love that? It's Good News Day. And speaking of good news, here's something that's very interesting. To me, as a young, sort of lifelong, almost vegan, there's a company called Good Catch, and they have dedicated their product line to creating vegan versions of fish. Now, we have a lot of chicken, vegan. We have a lot of beef, vegan, some pork, vegan. But fish has always been hard to do because there's that fishy taste, and if you get it wrong, it's going to really taste like bad fish. And we've tried some of their products in the past, and they're okay. They taste appropriate, but the serving size is this big. I don't know why, but if you want a fish cake, it's this big. Very, very tiny. Well, now they have salmon burgers that are 100% vegan. Well, I love that, but now the first thing I ask, because I have experience with them, is this. How big is that bun? I bet you the bun is this big. Good Catch is releasing a plant-based salmon burger through a new partnership. According to Good Catch, 30% of American seafood consumers purchase salmon each month, and it currently ranks as the most widely eaten fish in the U.S. Good Catch says the new salmon burgers are the first such item produced entirely within the U.S. The product offers a realistic and flaky texture, and mild salmon-like flavor, which I bet is the hardest part to get because it's either going to be really fishy or not fishy enough. Seasoned with citrus juice. Each burger contains 16 grams of protein, which is massively high and wonderful. Oh, Dora likes salmon. It is simple to prepare and lacks any unappealing fishy smell once cooked. And I can tell you that the fish patties we tried before were very good and very fine. They did not taste or smell fishy. So here it is, plant-based salmon burgers, 16 grams of protein, which is just spectacular. And we got all of our Good Catch stuff. I believe it was from, I don't think we ordered directly from the website, which I usually do. I believe we got it at Whole Foods. So salmon burgers are coming. That's lovely news. Also, speaking of lovely news, we have the Maya Angelou Quarter making its debut. Now, when I first heard about this Maya Angelou Quarter, I thought she was replacing George Washington. But that's not how this works. This quarter still has good old George on the front, but on the back side. Now, we're not saying it's the back of the bus. We're saying it's the flip side of the coin. There's Maya Angelou. Arms spread like, is it a dove or an eagle? I don't know. E pluribus unum. First black woman to be on an American coin. So remember they did all the state coins. Now they're doing important women in the world coins, which I think is very lovely. Maya Angelou Quarter is the first coin in the American Women Quarters program. Maya Angelou is a celebrated writer, performer, and social activist. She rose to international prominence as an author after the publication of her groundbreaking autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And I will tell you why the caged bird sings, because I have read the book, and I'm not ruining it for you. The caged bird sings for freedom. It's very beautifully written. Well, also, in this series of celebrating women on quarters, we have Maya Angelou, we discussed. We have Dr. Sally Ride, right? First woman in space. Wilma Mankiller, which some might think, knowing me, that might have a very personal meaning for me. And I won't say anything more about it than that. Wilma Mankiller. That quarter is the third coin in American Women Quarters program. She was the first woman elected principal chief of the Cherokee Nation and an activist for Native American and women's rights. So that's very lovely. We talked about Cherokee Nation a couple of days ago and their effort to preserve their language and how they've lost a lot of local languages because people who speak them die. Here's another woman, Nina Otero Warren. Who is this, you might ask? We're going to find out. That's her quarter. Nina Otero Warren Quarter is the fourth coin. She was a leader in New Mexico's suffrage movement, the right to vote, and the first female superintendent of Santa Fe Public Schools. Isn't that wonderful? Dora says, great honor for Maya. Glad for the rest of the women honored. I agree. I think it's just great. Now, there are some people who say, well, this is gender bias, right? This is bigoted. Why do the women get on a quarter? Why don't we have famous men on the quarters? And you just say to them, and they don't listen to you or agree with you, well, every coin we have has a man on it. So every day is Man's Day. Oh, they don't like to hear that. This is Anna May Wong. This is her quarter that's coming up. She is the fourth quarter. She was the first Chinese-American film superstar in Hollywood. She left a legacy for women in the film industry. She appeared in more than 60 movies throughout her career, in addition to her roles in silent films. Television, stage, she landed a role in one of the first movies made in Technicolor. She achieved international success despite racism and discrimination. So we have an Asian, we have an African American, we have a woman from the Cherokee Nation. Nina is, what was she again? What was her nationality? I can't remember. New Mexico suffrage movement. I guess we don't know if she has nationality. And I skipped Dr. Sally Ride, which is, I assume everyone knows her, but that's rude of me. So this is Dr. Ride. Very famous. A lot of kids know her. Very lovely. Dr. Sally Ride is the second coin. She was a physicist, astronaut, educator, and the first American woman to soar into space. Space Shuttle Challenger in 1983. So there you go. The quarters are coming. First it was the states. Now it's the women's turn to be on the other side of George Washington. Well, this is terrifying. This is Schneier on security, and this is his blog. I talked to you about Brian Krebs a couple of days ago, his blog on security, so you need to check out this blog too because it's really wonderful. Brian Krebs writes books, really, for blog posts. Long, deeply researched. This blog is just kind of like, hey, did you notice this terrible thing? And this is what I think about it. So here's the terrible thing. Researchers might have a double meaning here. Good white hat or black hat researchers, we don't know. Researchers have figured out how to intercept and fake an iPhone reboot. The quote is, "We'll dissect the iOS system and show how it's possible to alter a shutdown event, tricking a user that got infected into thinking that the phone has been powered off, but in fact, it's still running." The no reboot approach simulates a real shutdown. The user cannot feel a difference between a real shutdown and a fake shutdown. There is no user interface or any button feedback until the user turns the phone back on, even though it's already on. And then the blog author says it's a complicated hack, but it works. The uses for that fakery are, historically, when malware infects an iOS device, it can be removed very simply by just restarting the device, which clears the malware from memory. However, this technique, this black hat, bad technique, hooks the shutdown and reboot routines to prevent them from ever happening, allowing malware to achieve persistence as the device is never actually turned off. And the analysis of that is, this is another manifestation of the security problems that stem from all controls becoming software controls. Very interesting take. Back in the day, when the physical buttons on things actually did things, like turn on power, turn on the Wi-Fi, turn your camera on and off, you could actually know as an end user if something was, in fact, turned on or off. Now that software controls functions, you can never be sure if it's really on or off or not. Now, isn't that a trick? Is my iPhone on? Well, I rebooted it, I restarted it, but why do I still have this infection, this malware, infecting my phone? And he's right, you used to be able to turn your phone on and off, flick a switch. Now, one way you might be able to get around this is just to let your phone battery die. And once the battery dies, and the whole thing's dead, and then you plug it in, and then it reboots and gets rid of the malware. Maybe, I don't know. But it's very concerning that's usually the joke about computers. Well, reboot it. Well, restart it. Shut it down. Turn it off. Unplug it. Unplug. Plug back in. The whole thing starts over again. That's how a lot of people do technical support. Because it's a physical device that needs power. But if you tell your iPhone and you do this to turn it off, and it usually powers off, and it looks like it's powered off, but it's still running, still stealing all of your information and sending it to the bad guys, what are you going to do? The black hats, the white hats, whatever they're called, I don't know. Which is the good guy? In the movies, the black hat is the bad guy. But I think in the technical world, the black hat people are the good people because they pretend to do bad things and then they solve them and reveal them. Dora says, OMG, which is my favorite new word. 20 years, probably too old to use it, but that's okay. Oh my God. Fake shutdowns, so devious. Oh, absolutely. I'm afraid when I'm told to update my phone. Is it only iPhone? I have Android. Shutting down was a cure-all. Well, I think it's starting with an iPhone, but if they can figure out how to do it on an iPhone, I'm pretty sure they can do it on an Android phone. Because Apple prides themselves on their security, and there's a security chip, and Face ID, and tactile thumb, and fingerprint ID, which invites this kind of attack. Research, as they say, of figuring out how to trick end users into thinking that their phone is actually turned off. But it'll be interesting. I wonder if people would figure it out, because usually people, when they turn off their phone, they either have a problem or they're trying to save their battery. So if they turn off their phone, right, to save the battery, and it's still running, even though it looks like it's off, and their battery keeps going down, maybe somebody would figure it out. Oh, it's not really off. It's not really restarted. But the trouble comes when they say, oh, my battery's running down, I better restart my phone. And they try to restart their phone, and it's the same thing. It's not going to turn off. Very scary. And so it used to be, and it's happening sort of with cars, right? You used to have a physical key and turn the key and turn it on and go. Now you can start your car from your living room. And you don't even have to have a key anymore. You just put a fob in your pocket. And through Bluetooth or RFID, it just reads the key that's in your pocket. And there are bad people who go into rich neighborhoods with little scanners and try to scan the fob. I saw a video on the internet where this person, it was a Ring doorbell, right? So cam. And this person had a device in the middle of the night, came up, pretended to ring the doorbell. So if anyone on the street was looking, they could see that oh, that person's visiting, ring at 3 a.m. in the morning. And the Ring doorbell just sensed that someone was there, so it started recording. And they had this device with antennas on it, and they were going like this to the front door. And they waited about 30 seconds, and they went like this, and then they left. So this person posted that video online into a security group and said, what is this? They never rang the doorbell. What is that thing that they're putting around our door? I don't understand it. And people said they're trying to steal your car keys. They see your car in the driveway. It's a nice car. They know it starts with a fob in your pocket, and they're trying to steal your car. I said, how do they steal my car keys? It's my fob. I have it. They can't steal it. And they said these terrible people know that most people have their car keys or their car fobs near their front door. People come in the front door, put their keys in a dish, and they know where their car keys are. So they have these readers with these antennas that they turn on, and they're searching within, a 50-foot area inside your home to see if they can find your car key fob. And they find it, and they copy it on their little computer thing, and then they go back to their garage or their car waiting out there. They make a new key fob thing, and they start your car and take your car. I tell you, we've talked about the genius criminal mind before. I mean, can you imagine all of that work and all that effort to steal somebody's car by going to their house at 3 a.m. and scanning their front door to see if the car keys are near the front door? And luckily, that person with the Ring video said, well, we don't do that. We keep our car keys upstairs in the bedroom. And people said, that's very, very smart. Keep them as far away from any entrance or window that you can that's on the first floor, because that's what these people do. They need to be sort of close right now to be in proximity to you to read your key fob. And other people said, well, what if I'm out at a restaurant or I'm at a carnival? Are these people walking around? And they said, yes, they are. And sometimes they're obvious and sometimes they're not, but they sort of need to be near you if you have it in your pocket or in your purse, because they have to be able to read through what's surrounding your fob. And a lot of these new cars, you don't have a choice. You're going to have that kind of keyless entry. You just push a button instead of use a key. And now, my friend, we're going to take a very brief blood pressure break. I will see you in a moment. are back from break. This is Boles.tv. Hello, I'm David Boles. It's so nice you're here with us today. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern, we are here trying to make sense of this crazy contraption of a world. And it's sort of nice here on the East Coast. 48 degrees, and the wind is 2 miles per hour. And a little bit of a sunny sky, which is nice because it's been rather dark and dreary. I guess we're in the middle of the winter doldrums. And some universities are getting ready to open, some are not. Columbia University has announced they are online for the first 2 weeks of the semester, which is very smart. They're going remote. And then I guess coming back in person. NYU announced yesterday that they are 100% in person, plus you have to be boosted as a student and faculty, and plus you have to wear an N95 mask or something very, very similar. No more cloth masks. And they're going to be in person at the start of the semester. And some students are not happy with that. And other students are saying, well, just wait. NYU is all about money. Tuition is due by the 17th. So what they think they're going to do is say, come to class, you're on campus, move into the dorm, and then once everybody pays on the 17th, on the 18th, they'll announce, well, out of an abundance of caution, we're going remote for 2 weeks like all the other New York schools. Although I don't think CUNY is going remote yet. So it'll be interesting. That's the backstreet rumor you hear all over the internet. The chatter, if you will, and it's fascinating. And Omicron is dropping very slowly in New York City, but will it keep going? Doctors and Fauci and FDA seem to think that Omicron is it. We'll get done with the Omicron, it'll fade out, and we're done. Is there not going to be another variant? I don't know. It seems like they're saying no. But I don't know if that makes sense for what we've been through so far together. We'll have to keep an eye on it. But speaking of COVID-19, this is really wonderful news. Because I was boosted, and my beautiful wife, Jana Marie, we were boosted very early in August. So we've been a while since we've been boosted. Most people we know are now finally getting boosted. So we're thinking, well, should we go for a 4th shot like they're doing in Israel? Do we just wait? I don't know what to do. Well, this seems to be information that we need to know that's very encouraging. Pfizer, all our shots are with Pfizer. Pfizer is working on a new vaccine to specifically offer protection against Omicron, and it could arrive as soon as March. That's fantastic news. The drug maker is working on the hybrid vaccine as they try to address challenges in fighting more infectious variants. Researchers have said the Omicron strain is more effective against coronavirus vaccines because of more than 24 mutations. So I don't think it's done mutating against us. 6 months from now, we probably have a whole new variant. Though believed to be less severe than prior strains, Omicron's spread has caused surges in cases worldwide. And what I'm hearing from researchers is that, yeah, Omicron, if you're boosted, shot up and boosted, it's not as severe, but they say it's definitely not a cold. When you have it, you know you have it. And then there is the danger, the lingering danger of long COVID. You think you're over it, but it's still in your body, and it's still affecting your organs and your mind and your lungs and your blood. We're not going to know for 10 years if we're safe from Omicron or not. But that's good news. March is coming. What month is this? February, January, February, March? Maybe 6 weeks or so. Maybe we'll have a Omicron booster from Pfizer, which would be delightful. Because I've heard that with these vaccines, these mRNA vaccines, you have to be a little bit careful because if you take too many shots, your body starts to just kind of get used to it and says, oh, this is just another shot. I've already had that before. I'm ignoring it. And then it doesn't work anymore. So what do they call it? mRNA exhaustion, I think is the term. Saw this yesterday and just fell in love with it. We talked about bomb-sniffing locusts yesterday and bomb-sniffing rats. And now we have Tasmanian devils, who it turns out are picky eaters, because they can afford to be. The Tasmanian devil is the only scavenger in the world known to be a picky eater. Oh, Dora says, my friend got it. When he called and his voice was raspy and I knew another friend had the same symptoms. Oh, that's just really terrible. And I don't know why people are trying to say, oh, it just feels like you have the flu. It feels like you have a little bit of a cold. And maybe that's true for some people. But it's not a cold. It's a really devastating virus. And we know that these booster shots don't prevent it. But they're supposed to prevent us from dying. Or at least being hospitalized. And Hikaru Nakamura, who is a streamer on Twitch and a grandmaster in chess, he was quarantined in Poland for 10 days. And he couldn't go out, couldn't leave his hotel room. Quarantined, strictly, by the government. And he said he slept all day. And he said about 3 days he had a really sore throat where he couldn't talk and couldn't swallow. And then he said he was fine. Well, that doesn't sound fine at all. Dora also says, I'm testing myself today as I've been in and out of doctor's offices. And your friend is triple vaccinated. Oh, boy. You wonder how they get exposed. Are they wearing masks everywhere they go? We just ordered a whole bunch of brand new N95 masks. The bend masks that we wear, those are ASTM level 3, which are supposed to be just as good or maybe a little bit better than an N95 mask. But the N95 is the gold standard, and so we have ordered ours. And we're throwing away our cloth masks. We have a friend here who is a health nut, owns a health store, and he and his family seem to not care one little bit about this COVID virus. And if you happen to pass him in the hallway when masks were mandated, he would not have one on, and he would just go like this with his shirt, or later on, he would have a little neck gaiter that he'd pull up. Now, I know that those neck gaiters do not protect against COVID for him or for other people. They spread 8 feet. He would not wear a mask. Dora says, I think he got it from his daughter who works at a drugstore, so he works from home. Oh, that would explain it. I do worry about people who work at drugstores. And the pharmacies and the techs are there all day with all these sick people. Even before coronavirus, people were sick and would make the staff sick. And our local Duane Reade, they used to be open 24 hours. And now they're open maybe 8 hours a day. And they say it's because they don't have people. People are either sick, out with the Omicron, or people don't want to work for minimum wage in a high-risk place like a drugstore anymore. So this is how it's changing the economy. I hope for the better. I hope for being safer, but who knows? And speaking of Dora's friend, when you teach, and everyone in the building has a mask and is vaccinated, and the kids are still getting sick, you just wonder what's going on. How is this happening? Are they just being sloppy when they're at home and on the street? It's a very weird thing. So Dora, are you doing a home test or are you going somewhere to do your test? Are you doing a rapid test or a PCR test? At-home rapid. Well, that's good. I hope it goes well. And I hope there's no faint line at all. And it's funny, there's one group that said last week that our pharmacy, they said, hey, go into the Duane Reade. They just got a whole stack of the Binax COVID tests. And they're going to run out of them really fast, so you got to get over there as fast as you can to buy them. And they're limiting to 4 boxes per person. So if you have a friend or your wife, both of you go, and both of you buy 4 boxes. And each box, I believe, has 2 tests in it. We haven't purchased any yet because we're very, 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 very careful, and we've been very lucky. We go into lockdown mode, and we don't go anywhere unless we absolutely have to. And when we have to, then we really mask up. Oh my goodness, your job provides you with testing kits. That's fantastic. And do they mail them to you, or do you have to go pick them up? And that's the way it should be. Everybody should be given tests. And I know Biden is trying to get all the insurance companies to pay for 8 tests per person per month. And he did it, but there are no tests to be had. Where is somebody going to get 8 tests? There aren't any tests to go buy. Even on Amazon, there are no tests to buy, except the $90 kits for the at-home PCR test. Messenger service or pick up at work. Wow. I know where you work, and that's a wonderful company for what they're doing. And the fact that they allow you to work from home when you want to, I think it's really, really fantastic. That's how you take care of people. And that's one of the advantages of working for a big multinational, international company that is vital to the economic being of the world and the United States. They know they have to take care of their people. They know that when it comes down to it, they have to do the right thing. The smaller companies, mom and pop shops, if I can get away with it, I'm going to get away with it. And you would think if you worked for, like, the state of New York or the state of New Jersey, you would be having the same treatment. They'd be sending you test kits. And they do have you stay home if you're infected or near an infected person. That's very good. But as far as testing, they could do a better job. Just like New Jersey will allow you to they will send you for free a test. But you have to register the test, you have to download the app, you have to create an online account. Then you just can't take the test, it's a spit test. You have to log in to their Zoom server and wait for someone to watch you spit into the vial. And the wait time is between 15 minutes and 45 minutes in a Zoom call, waiting for them to get to you. Then you have to close the vial in front of them and mail it to be tested. And that takes 2 or 3 days, and then 2 or 3 days after that, you get your results in your app, in your online portal. So it's like a week. You do a test on Zoom, send it in, get it back, and by that time, if you had COVID, you're over it. That needs to be fixed. It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. It's a waste of everybody's time and money. It looks good politically. Oh, free tests to everyone in New Jersey. Just ask for it and create an account and download it and go into a Zoom call and be observed spitting into a vial and then mail it back. We'll test it and then we'll let you know. That's untenable. So the lovely Tasmanian devil is the only scavenger in the world known to be a picky eater. Animals that eat carcasses. Animals that eat other animals. Typically, generalists that will snack on whatever they find. But when researchers looked at the stable isotopes in the whiskers of 71 wild Tasmanian devils, they found that most had strong food preferences. Some of these devils are choosing to eat things like panda melons and wallabies. Others are choosing to take birds, eggs, or other types of prey. Basically, it's because they can. If you're a scavenger in Africa, then you're competing with all these other predators for food. But in Tasmania, there aren't any other predators around or other competition for carcasses. The main competition of the Tasmanian devil is just with each other. I think that's such a fun story. I don't want that egg. I'll take the other egg because I can. Well, this was a very interesting story about Batman. And the idea that everything that was Batman became a bat thing. If you remember the TV show in the 60s, close of every show, they'd say, "Be here tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel." Right? Remember that? And Batman had a boomerang. But they didn't call it a boomerang, they called it a batarang. He had his own car. But it wasn't a car, it was a Batmobile. An airplane. Wasn't called an airplane, called a Batwing. So where does that linguistic twist come from, and how is it used in normal entertainment culture? Google Ngrams is a language use tracking software, and it's tracked for the last 80 years the use of language in America. Oh, our new friend is here. I always enjoyed the Batwing and Batboat. Yes, fantastic. Now, my friend, if I were to speak to you, how would I pronounce your name? Is it Mouse Cube V3? What would I call you? Or is it Mao 5? I don't know. What is your preference? And what this Google Ngram figured out is that the use of the word bat as an adjective became used 50% more across the entirety of the English language. That is cultural affectation. Occurrences before a noun nearly tripled. As we talked about, bat wing, bat channel, batarang. Mouse is good with me, thank you. Perfect. Mouse is our new best friend. Mouse showed up, made the debut when our friend Dora was not able to meet it with us one day. And Mouse cheered and put bits, and we talked about wonderful things. And Mouse is back. It's fabulous. And Mouse hosts us on the Mouse channel. So when we are on the air and Mouse is not on the air on Twitch, we air on Mouse's channel. It's very cool. I didn't even know what it meant. Mouse explained it to me. The statistical explosion of bat as a non-noun is almost entirely because of Batman and its licenses. Yes, woohoo! Mouse, fabulous. I can't wait for you to meet Jana Marie. She'll be here tomorrow at 10:15, if you're around. She's very delightful and fun and slightly scary if you've been married to her for 33 years. That's what keeps a person in line. Just kidding, darling. The bat noun structures carried to the gadgets of other superheroes as well. Spider-Man briefly drove a Spider-Mobile. I don't know if you've seen photos of it, but it's a dune buggy that is blue and red. It's very cute, but it didn't last very long. People were more likely to believe that this car is driven by Spider-Man. And notice Spider-Man is hyphenated, as Batman used to be hyphenated in the early days. And now it's just Batman with no dash. I always spell Spider-Man with no dash. People were more likely to believe that this car is driven by Spider-Man than a car that in some way resembled a spider. This is due to the popularity of Spider-Man and the precedent set by Batman's existing gadgets. And another example, the Green Arrow, another superhero comic character. The Green Arrow's lair is the Arrow Cave, all right? So your Bat Cave, Arrow Cave, Spider-Man Cave, Spider Cave. As pointed out by Harley Quinn, who is another comic book person, in Injustice Year 1, Part 2. This doesn't make any sense, Harley Quinn said, as arrows have nothing to do with caves. The joke came from the reader's acceptance that superhero totem noun simply makes sense. This accepted format comes from Batman's influence on media. From unintentional to serious to parody, using the structure came to be a standard across all publications, especially for its originator, the Batman himself. Love that story. Which then leads us directly into this other fascination about language and gender bias in speech. We think we come a long way. Oh, him, her, them, they, X, she, he, it, equality. There was a time when I was growing up in the 80s where women who were very strong did not want to spell woman with man. W-O-M-A-N. Because I don't want a man and a woman. That was the idea. And I'm not saying that they were gay but they were very strong feminists, I guess you would say. Genderists. And they would spell it W-O-M-Y-N, leaving the man out of woman. A little extreme, but if you didn't want trouble, you played along. So that's where the inspiration for this next story is kind of coming from. That history of trying to make gender on the printed page more equitable. So the journal Language looked at 6 textbooks published between the years 2005 and 2017, so it's very recent, to determine if the selection and placement of words conveying gender bias was similar to that seen in a study research that had been done more than 20 years ago. What linguists who study the structure of sentences to investigate grammar rules found is that nothing has changed since the first study was done in 1997. Now, is this on purpose or is it just lazy? Is it used because you think generationally that young kids become more sensitive, some would say more woke, to what's going on in the world, and they try to adjust their points of view? But you can't discount the influence of the parents. The parents are doing the teaching. According to the data, male protagonists occurred almost twice as often as females in the textbooks and appeared in more prominent roles in stories or examples. Men were more likely to be portrayed as having stable occupations, like a doctor or a professor, handling books and spreading violence, whereas women were more likely to exhibit emotions, especially negative ones such as anger or unhappiness. Very interesting gender stereotyping. In the study, female gendered arguments were more likely to be associated with physical, 59%, versus 54%, and emotional activities, 17 versus 15, while male-gendered arguments were associated with intellectual activities, 12% to 7%. The findings suggest the pattern has continued to be prevalent in linguistics for decades, implicitly communicating an integrated, ingrained bias against women to undergraduate students who are learning about the study of language as a science. And those women, W-M-Y-N-M-A-N, that was the idea that they were trying to get across. We need to be aware and conscious of what we're saying and how we're expressing ourselves. So they did it sort of radically, and it didn't go over very well. But there are still women who spell women without M-A-N. Here's the link to the study. Gender bias, if you want more information. Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and talk about a very fascinating but difficult topic, and that is transgender athletes in competition. Back in a moment. And we're back from break. I'm David Boles. This is Boles.tv. Live every day here for you, 9 a.m. Eastern. Saturdays and Sundays, 11 a.m. with Jana Marie as she teaches about disability and American Sign Language. So today we're having interesting conversations about Tasmanian devils and Batman and linguistics and gender bias, and oh boy, we're just getting started. So this idea of transgender athletes is really a fascination because it goes down into the depths of what is male and what is female. And in the 70s, there was a lot of controversy, especially in the Olympics, with Russian athletes who, in addition to blood doping, were accused, especially the women athletes, of being men. And they weren't doing DNA testing or genetics testing, but they were taking testosterone, medically enhanced, and there was outrage in the Olympic community that the Russians were cheating. They were having men compete as women to win the most gold medals. And it was never really proven, and it wasn't transgender. They didn't talk about it. Then for a while, they would determine male and female competitions if you had the genitalia or not. And this is before sex change operations were a thing. They were very rare. And so they would have these athletes, and they'd have to go in there, and they'd have to pull down their pants in front of these officials and prove if they were male or female. And some of the women competitors who were on drugs had, how shall we say, enhanced female parts that some women just have that looked like a penis. And people got very upset that you're looking in people's pants to determine their gender. We should be doing DNA tests. I said, well, it doesn't matter because the Russians are cheating no matter what they do. And then it made me think of cheating and competition. And you remember the athlete, I think he's from Australia, Oscar Pistorius, lost both of his legs, runs on carbon steel legs, or at least he used to, because he murdered and killed his girlfriend in his apartment building because she was threatening to take his legs, and so he said that he was in fear for his life, and then he was sentenced to some minimal 2 or 3 years in a luxury prison in Australia. He was ready to get out, and I guess in Australia that there's a system, a function where you can go back and say, you know what, we've thought about this a little bit, and he needs to be in prison for a lot longer. So re-sentence him to a longer prison term. And they did, and he did. But when Oscar was competing, running in races, and not with able-bodied people, but in like disabled events, there were people online saying, this is unfair competition. And because I am sort of in the disabled community, my wife Jana Marie is deaf, and we support deaf rights and the Americans with Disabilities Act, I would at that time, I wouldn't today, but back then, I would engage with these people. And they weren't as radical as the anti-vaccine people are today. They were a little bit more reasonable. And I'd say, why are you saying this is unfair competition to have him racing on artificial legs? And these people would say online, in all authenticity, not kidding around, that he's cheating because he has enhanced himself physically. He has super legs. He has springy legs that make him run faster. And I would say, you're telling me a person who has no human legs and who has to strap on these carbon fiber legs that do have a little bit of a spring when you run, you're telling me that that makes him superhuman? That makes him run faster than a person who has real, genuine human legs? Yes, of course it does. He has superpowers. I would stop the engagement at that point, but I would make the point that it's absolutely physically impossible for a person with artificial legs to run as fast or faster than an able-bodied person. And they didn't believe me. They thought it was all fixed. He's a big cheater. And so now, with the advent of transgenderism being more accepted in the mainstream world and medical interventions becoming better and people being trapped in a body in which their mind does not accept, we are led into the world of the super athlete. And it appears, from what I was able to try to figure out, and I'll share the link to the story with you, it appears the sticking point is if you are born with a male body, let's say, and you go through puberty and you get that testosterone kick in puberty that a female athlete never gets, that will always put you at an advantage against a genetically born female athlete, because your body, even though your mind believes you're a woman, your body was male and had that testosterone advance that made your muscles bigger, made you stronger, made you faster, that women don't get. So it doesn't matter, it seems the argument goes, that at the age of 22, and you're a star athlete as a male, and you become female and take estrogen, none of that is enough to minimize the advantages that you physically had when you went through puberty. And that appears, as I can understand, the sticking point of the entire argument, that transgender men who are transforming into women should not be allowed to compete as women athletes. And in this story I'm going to share with you, the swimmers, and in this story there is a female swimmer on an opposing team who is going to become a man, is in the process of gender changing, of transforming, but this female-bodied swimmer with the mind of a man is going to continue to compete at the college level as a woman, because even though in her mind she's a man, she doesn't want to compete for the men's team because she knows she can't compete against the men. So it's to her advantage to stay where she is, transitioning, I guess, with testosterone or whatever, and beat the women, than to be a man that she believes she is and go compete with the men. It's fascinating to me. So that's the setup, as I understand it. And then it becomes political and mean, as everything that does that's a little bit uncomfortable for people. The 22-year-old zipped past her competitors from Yale and Dartmouth. This is an Ivy League story, by the way, so it's even more interesting because you're supposedly dealing with the most intellectual, brilliant people in the world who can't figure this out. Economically, physically, or mentally, or even emotionally. Competitors from Yale and Dartmouth, and was again first to the wall. It looked effortless, providing more proof that she's among the best female college swimmers in the country. and more evidence that her detractors will use to say she doesn't belong in the pool. For 3 years, Thomas had competed for the men's swimming team at Penn, which is an Ivy League school, University of Pennsylvania. After undergoing more than 2 years of hormone replacement therapy, the transgender woman now competes for the school's women's team, and her fast times have sparked a debate from the starting blocks to online message boards to cable news networks. Okay. Continuing. Classifying transgender athletes has amounted to a delicate balancing act for officials in several sports. A tug-of-war of sorts between inclusivity and fairness. The NCAA's transgender athlete policy allows transgender women to compete in women's events after completing a full year of testosterone suppression treatment. Thomas, the swimmer in question, has been undergoing treatment for the past 2.5 years and says it has depleted her of the strength and speed that she had when she was competing for the men's team. But some researchers say Thomas's times show 1 year of treatment isn't necessarily enough to level the playing field. And detractors say her continued participation is unfair to the other swimmers. The other female swimmers. Since she obliterated 2 school records and posted nation-leading times at a meet last month, Thomas has garnered attention from across the swimming community and right-wing media. Credentialed media at Saturday's meet included Fox News, Newsweek, the Daily Mail, and ESPN. Tennis stars Martina Navratilova and Chris Everett have publicly said Thomas has no business competing in women's swimming, as has Olympian Erica Brown, who said last month it's time to start standing up for women's sports. Now that is really, really, really interesting. That 2 very famous women say it's unfair for a transgender man to compete as a woman. Now that is not the politically correct answer. And it's fascinating that that's how they feel. A director of sports governance at the University of Colorado noted that sports organizations have always grappled with complicated classifications. From disabled athletes to competitors switching nationalities, he noted that international soccer players are cap-tied at the elite level and cannot compete for one country and then change nationalities and compete for another. Now, this would make sense for gender as well. If an athlete competes in men-women categories, he or she would no longer be eligible to change categories. Now that doesn't seem right to me either. You're saying that transgender people are like countries. And your allegiance has to be to your birth gender and not who you believe that you really are. Cap-tied. You can't compete for one country and then change nationalities and compete for another. As if that's the same thing as what transgender people go through. It's not really a choice. I don't believe that women want to become men and men want to become women out of flippancy. Just like in Paralympic classification, science does not make these decisions for us, but science can certainly help to inform our decisions. Ultimately, classification decisions reflect our values and who we are and what we want sport and the society of which it is to be a part of. And here's the link to the full story. It's just absolutely incredible. And can you decide just by looking at someone if they belong? Because that's what a lot of these people are saying. And this is the Washington Post article. I will just scroll down as a matter of fair use and just show you one image to share. That is the person in question, Leah Thomas, a transgender woman. And Stand Up for Women. And there she is again. And some people are pointing at her and saying, it doesn't matter. That's a man. Not a woman. Not a woman's body. Doesn't matter. He went through puberty as a man and has an absolute disadvantage. Now here's where it gets a little sticky. Some people are saying, well, the solution to this transgender thing is we create a whole new category for transgender athletes, and there are more of them. There are more of them, and there are more trans people in the world. So it's not like we're discriminating against them and putting them in a pool all by themselves. Not a pool, but a group all by themselves. No. This is the way of the world. So what those people are promoting is you have men competing against men, women competing against women, and then you have the transgender people. And we have a whole new thing for them to compete in and for them to be a part of. And this is nothing new. We had Renee Richards. Was a tennis superstar and lived life as a man and then became a woman and competed on the women's tennis tournaments and was made fun of and derided and called a faker, and you're just here because you can't beat men. I don't think the solution is to create a third gender, which is what some of these people are suggesting. You have men, you have women, and you have the, as they say, the freaks in between, the third gender, the transgender, putting them here in this thing. The whole idea is that you're stuck in a body that you don't believe belongs to you, and so you transition into the body that you were intended to have. And that doesn't make you a freak. That doesn't put you in a third category of being a transgender athlete, and you can't compete against your gender if you're choosing. And this goes the other way with Bruce Jenner. I mean, growing up, 1976, Bruce Jenner was a superstar. He was big. He was muscled. You wanted to be Bruce Jenner. He was fantastic. He was on the Wheaties box, waving the American flag. Olympic champion, Bruce Jenner. And then later on, you find out the guy's miserable his whole life. He's in the wrong body. And people make fun of him and call him a phony, but you look at the life she has now, as Caitlyn Jenner, and you think, my goodness, that's a brave change. There's another friend of mine that I know, that I've worked with remotely, never met. This is part of the charm or the curse of having an online life. Worked very closely with him. His name was Mike. And he sort of disappeared for a couple of years, and one of my other friends found him and said, well, you know, Mike is now Michelle and has transitioned. And it was the first time in my life that a personal person that I knew that I'd worked with very closely for many years had transitioned. And I admit it was a little bit of a shock. It was a surprise. But then you go outside of yourself and you think about what it must have been like to live in one body that you do not believe belongs to you for 50 years, and to find the courage and the ability and the money to have the operation and make the change and have the life that you've always wanted to have. So that gives us a lot of things to think about today. And now we're going to take our final break. I will return momentarily. And we're back on Boles.tv. Hello, I'm David Boles. I'm so glad you're here with us today. 9 a.m. Eastern, every day of the work week. We're here, working it out with you. Jana Marie on weekends, 11 a.m. Hardcore ASL. Well, just to kind of put a final wrap on the transgender story, which I just find fascinating on so many levels. Bruce Jenner / Caitlyn Jenner has said, I believe, on several occasions that male athletes who become women should not compete. She thinks it's an unfair advantage. You cannot overcome the advantage that the male body has going through puberty. So take that as you wish. And the other issue that is in that article that's fascinating is, I believe it's Harvard. There is a Harvard female swimmer who competes as a woman and is going to transition into a man, but they're waiting till the college career is over to officially become a man. And those who are talking about this said, well, why can't that Penn swimmer do that? Just go over there and swim as a man. You just hold on for your transition. And then when you're done competing as an athlete, then you go become a woman and live as a woman. But the fact is, these people accuse Leah Thomas, you can't win as a man. So that's why you're transitioning to become a woman, so you can beat all the women and have all the records in your name. That's the controversy. And the University of Pennsylvania supports Leah Thomas and says we are on her side, period. It's not open for discussion. She will compete as a woman, period. And it is sort of galling for them to say, well, look, you might be a woman, but just wait a couple of years till your eligibility is over, and then you can transition. And they say you can start transitioning and lowering your testosterone, but you just stay on the men's team and compete. Little impossible. Now, earlier we were talking about Oscar, who has the carbon fiber legs and is competing. Well, here's some other wonderful news about a team of scientists at the University of Missouri. They have this whole new technique using small wearable sensors that gather data on how people who have suffered a traumatic hand amputation use a prosthesis versus a transplanted hand in everyday life. So far, the data shows that people with transplanted hands demonstrate a more balanced use of their hands than those who use a prosthesis. I didn't really even know that a hand transplant was possible. Now that's big news. That shocked me. And I remember many years ago, 30 years ago, Jen and I had a friend who was deaf in the Midwest. And terrible story. He was in a training program. And at that time, you could learn how to become a printing press operator. And printing presses, the old printing presses where the paper goes through the rollers and gets inked. And they're two giant cylinders that are there's a very little thing here where the paper goes through and they spin. So he was a student at a college learning how to run a printing press. And he was deaf. And his hand, up to his elbow, got caught in the printing press. So you can imagine how horrifying that would have been. That his whole, the whole thing from here to here was crushed like a pancake. And they're very lucky that there were people around, and he screamed, and they turned off the machine, and they were close to a hospital, and they saved his life. And they cut off his arm. And as a deaf person, that's very traumatic because you're losing half of your ability to communicate. And as one of our sort of teaching initiatives, Jan and I sometimes have our students interact, like if they're at a party, and we place a full cup of water in their left hand. And these are advanced ASL students, so they can't spill it. And then they have to have a conversation with everybody in the room using one hand, inspired by our friend who lost his arm. And it's very hard to do because many hand signs in ASL are done with two hands, not with one hand. So you have to kind of use this hand to make a larger concept without spilling the water. And our friend, we visited him in the hospital, and his bloody stump in the hospital, and everyone was there. It was filled with flowers, and he was in a good mood. He was complaining about all the flowers. He said, I'm allergic to the flowers. Please just bring balloons and take the flowers out. And he said, fascinatingly, that he had a premonition for the past month that he was going to lose his dominant arm. He didn't know how, he didn't know why, but every night he dreamt about it. And so those dreams scared him so much that for the past month he had been practicing writing with his non-dominant hand. He would force himself to feed himself with his non-dominant hand just in case something terrible happened. And then, by gosh, it did. Now, is that willful happening? Did the dream make it a reality? Did something in his mind help his arm go onto the printing press? No, my gosh, no. But there was something that was scaring him, and maybe it was learning the printing press. Maybe he said, my gosh, can you imagine if my arm got caught in there? So I don't know what happened or if he got a lot of money from the university, but I'm sure that he did, because there is no way that the university is not at fault. Doris says, wild, never. Got those kind of premonitions. Yeah, it was amazing when he talked. And that's why he seemed to be in such an okay mood, because he felt the nightmares were over. The terrible thing happened. I lost my arm. I can write. I can use my other hand because I've been practicing for a month. It was the most amazing story I've ever really heard in my entire life. And he's telling this all from his hospital bed with his new, fresh, amputated stump bleeding through the gauze. And they said he was lucky to be alive because his arm was really, really crushed. And it was stuck in there, and I believe that the firefighters had to cut him out of the printing press. Because the rollers are ton rollers, and they don't go the opposite way. Oof. But he survived. So that's why this story is so interesting to me about hand transplants. Most activities performed by a typical adult involve a fairly evenly balanced reliance on both hands. Over the course of a normal day, roughly 55% of people's activities involve the dominant hand, and 45% involve the non-dominant hand. We have evidence that shows experienced prosthesis users rely on their prosthetic hand about 20% of daily activities. Well, that makes sense. And they use their uninjured limb for the remaining 80. Now, that's a lot of pressure to put on one arm, 80% of the workload. Hand transplant recipients exhibit a more balanced pattern of limb use that is closer to what we see in healthy adults, although not quite at the 55-45 split. The doctor also noted that a hand transplant comes with significant risks, such as developing certain infections and cancers from the lifetime use of immunosuppressants needed to help keep the body from rejecting the new hand. Coronavirus. We can bring people into a clinical laboratory setting and measure how they are doing with a prosthetic or hand transplant. But these observations are typically made under optimal and artificial conditions and therefore might not accurately show us how people are truly functioning during their everyday lives. These sensors, however, which continuously record movements over multiple days while people go about their lives, have the ability to revolutionize treatments by providing real-world data that will help us develop personalized approaches to treat traumatic hand loss. While military personnel can experience a traumatic hand loss in both combat and non-combat situations, the doctor said these injuries can also occur in civilian populations with work-related recreational accidents, such as with farming equipment or fireworks. The study collected data continuously over 3 days as participants went about their normal lives. They wore 4 different sensors, 2 on the wrists of the prosthetic or transplanted hand as well as on the uninjured limb, and 1 on the upper arms. And here's the full story for you. Hand transplants. It's a fascinating read. Very technical, but if you're interested in that kind of thing, it's right there for you. And now we finish the day with this very interesting story about sidewalks. There's a big sidewalk crisis in Los Angeles, which is really interesting because you think of Los Angeles and all you think of is cars. But cities command and demand safe sidewalks. And you'd be surprised. New York City is Sidewalk City. And there are cars and people and trucks and bikes and everything on the sidewalks, and you have to navigate around them. But even small towns need to have sidewalks because people can't walk in the street, especially if you're disabled. And there was one guy recently in the Midwest, small town, and the city said, look, we have to put in sidewalks on some of these back streets because we can't have people walking in the streets. And most of the homeowners said, okay, you're going to put in the sidewalk, the city's going to put it in, and my share that I have to pay for my part of the sidewalk, because these are long stretches, big farm areas, is $5,000, which is a lot of money. But you could pay it over time back to the city. And there was one guy who said, I'm not paying $5,000. You put in your own sidewalk. And the city sued him, and he sued the city back and then began bad-mouthing the city attorney and calling him a criminal and saying he's stealing money from him. But all he's trying to do is put in a sidewalk so people can walk. And the city attorney, believe it or not, sued the guy back and said, you are defaming my character. Stop it. And if you stop it, I'll leave you alone. And the guy would not stop it. He went on the newspaper. He wrote letters to the editor. He put signs in his yard. The city attorney is a thief. And so the city attorney said, okay, I warned you. Took the guy to court. Won a judgment of $10,000 against him for personal defamation. And the guy had to pay or go to jail. And he had to pay $5,000 for a sidewalk, his share of the sidewalk. So the guy couldn't keep his mouth shut. Ended up costing him $15,000, where if he had just gone on the neighborly way like they do in the Midwest and paid his $5,000, he would have been in and out. But instead he had to make a big fuss. So Los Angeles, unlike the Midwest, has 10,750 miles of sidewalks, and 40% of them are broken. Repairs are supposed to be on the way. In 2016, Los Angeles lost a class action lawsuit initiated by disability rights advocates, who alleged that the city's inaccessible sidewalks violate the Americans with Disabilities Act. This settlement requires Los Angeles to spend $1.4 billion over 30 years to fix the sidewalks. So you know the sidewalks are broken. We're not going to fix them right now. Give us 30 years. In November of 2021, Los Angeles Comptroller released an audit that found progress had been agonizingly slow. 5 years later, after starting the repair program, the city had repaired less than 1% of its sidewalks. During the same period, it paid out $35 million to settle lawsuits filed over pedestrian injuries caused by broken sidewalks. At this rate, it'll take 500 years to fix all the sidewalks. And I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous. And this is where it gets really good. Fortunately, there's a simple way to ensure that sidewalks will be accessible to people. Cities can require that the sidewalk abutting any property must comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act when the property is sold. Now, they did a similar thing here in Jersey City about 10 years ago. They used to say the property line ended at the sidewalk. So from the sidewalk to the street, the city took care of, like gas lines, pipelines, electrical lines. And then the city decided to change it. They said, no. Your property line extends to the middle of the street. And then your neighbor across the street, their property line extends to the middle of the street too. So the city does nothing. So from the street, half the street to the sidewalk to your building, landlord's responsible. And it was very smart because when things would go bad, the city then could go after them and say, look, it's not our problem. We used to fix things that stopped at the sidewalk, but now it's your responsibility. You pay. For more than 2 decades, I've studied these point-of-sale programs, the writer says, as a way to repair inaccessible sidewalks. Lawsuits may be needed to ensure accessibility for people with disabilities. Good for them. But almost everyone will benefit. During COVID-19, millions of people began walking for exercise in their neighborhoods. So many of them now know from experience about the high cost of bad sidewalks. In California, code requires property owners to repair damaged sidewalks fronting their property. Nevertheless, many cities don't enforce the law because it's politically difficult to compel property owners to pay for the repairs, which is why 40% of Los Angeles' sidewalks are broken. Point-of-sale programs can help cities enforce the state law. More generally, all U.S. cities should consider a point-of-sale program if they lose an ADA lawsuit or want to avoid one. And there's the municipal code, and the author says, how would this policy work in Los Angeles? Property owners would not have to pay or do anything unless they sell their property. They need to fix only the broken sidewalks fronting their property, so they will see where their money goes, and the cost of the sidewalk repair should be small compared to LA's median home sale price of $949,000. After selling the property, owners who move out of the city will leave their neighborhoods in better shape at no cost to those who remain. That's a smart thing. And here's the link to the full article in case you want to look at it. Safer sidewalks. It's a city problem. And it's also a small town problem, as we know. There's Dora. We have lots of areas without sidewalk, but plenty of parks and open spaces. Sidewalks are very important, and there are some cities that just don't have them. And you get out there, especially if you're in a wheelchair, where do you go? You have to go in the street. There are places. Las Vegas is a very famous city that is very infamous for not having enough sidewalks. So people in wheelchairs, on scooters, they have to go into the street and walk. Dora says we can safely walk. That's good. And in many of these small towns, you have the street, you have the property line, and then it's a little bit of a ditch because it's a drainage ditch. So people can't walk on the property. They can't walk in the street because the cars are going by, so they're forced to walk in this drainage ditch, which is very, very unsafe. So the project is you have to build up the drainage ditch, bring it to equal, put in drainage, the pipe, and then put the sidewalk on. And it's miles and miles of sidewalk. That's why it's $5,000 per house owner, because these are big lots in the Midwest. These are not small little city plots. So we talk about Batman and linguistics and gender equality on the page and gender equality in the swimming pool. And we talked about the Tasmanian devils. And we talked about breaking our sidewalks and the magic of implantation of a new hand. It's amazing stuff. And we hope for the Pfizer Omicron booster to arrive in March. That will be a miracle if it gets here soon. Well, it's been a wonderful show. I'll see you again bright and early, 9 a.m. Eastern, here on Boles.tv. Jana Marie stops by tomorrow around 10:15 or so to give her wonderful lesson in American Sign Language talking about vegetables. And if you don't know ASL, you're not interested in ASL, you'll still enjoy the show because she types and you can chat with her, ask her questions, she answers everything, and she will just walk you through it. As same on her Saturday and Sunday show at 11. She types everything, keywords, right? So you can look at the chat and say, oh, put all the keywords together. Oh, she's talking about disability in court. So you won't be left out. You won't be left behind. But you'll be exposed to new thoughts and new ideas, which is always a good thing. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care, be well, be safe, be thoughtful, be kind to each other. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. You can find me online at Twitter, David Boles. Ask me a question. You can email me, david@boles.tv, and you can also email the Jana Marie, jana@boles.tv. On Facebook, we're BOLES, TikTok, Boles TV, YouTube, Boles Blues, and Instagram, Boles Books. See you tomorrow.